Hey cats, today I've got a winged horse Pegasus comparison video for you, putting the newly released Pegasus 40 up against some other competitors with similar price, use case and versatility. Let's get straight to it. So Nike released their shoe for all occasions recently, the Pegasus 40. Today I'm matching it up against some other models from my collection to help you make those all-important shoe purchases. I got 4 shoes for you today. The Pegasus 40, of course, newly released, the Asics Novablast 3, the Reebok FLOATRIDE Energy 5, and last but by no means least, the Puma Velocity Nitro 2. Some absolute bangers. Let's get to those stats first. Weight-wise, the Novablast and Energy 5 come in about 50 and 40 grams lighter, which is amazing when you consider these are daily use shoes. Though the Velocity Nitro 2 is still very light on foot, being about 20 grams less than the Pegasus 40. So I guess you've got a little bit more tech built into the Pegasus 40. You've got foam and those air units too. Maybe that's adding a little bit to the weight. Though I find with daily sort of trainers, weight's not really all that important. You've got to take it all with a pinch of salt. These are all still very light shoes in the grand scheme of things. Some interesting midsole foams in these contenders goes to show that there's more to just softness than the midsole itself. The Reebok Energy 5 was by far the softest of all 4, followed by the Nitro section of the Puma Velocity Nitro 2, then the Flight Foam Blast of the Novablast 3. The fabric strobel board sort of toppers that you get in these shoes do affect the softness to some degree, so again take it with a bit of a pinch of salt. A few stats in terms of surface area next. The Novablast 3 is easily the widest in the forefoot by some margin, over 1 centimetre wider than the Pegasus 40. That's quite odd really, given Nike's recent trend of very wide four-footed shoes. Things like the Invincible Run and the Infinity Run. The Reebok's got more heel width with 9.7 centimetres. That's over a centimetre more than the Nike Pegasus 40. Odd that the Pegasus is actually the heaviest of the bunch, but it's also the narrowest too. So first up against the Pegasus 40 today is the Energy 5 from Reebok. So lots of softness here compared to the Nike Pegasus 40. That FLOATRIDE foam really is very airy. I did find though that the Nike does break in a little bit after about 10 miles. The React softens up somewhat and it doesn't feel all that firm. But I'd suggest not judging the book by the cover, at least the shoe straight out of the box. So the weight difference of about 40 grams is actually quite apparent when you get the shoes in hand. They both have a very low profile sort of heel collar here. The ankle collars are actually very similar on both shoes. I think the Reebok makes for a really striking profile though. This one looks absolutely fantastic. The Energy 5 feels a little less present as it wraps around your foot, and I found it to be quite a bit more breathable than the Pegasus. I think that's very welcome as well as we move out of those colder temperatures into some warmer weather. The mesh on the upper is actually quite a bit thinner here on the Reebok, though I wouldn't really describe the Nike as being a very warm shoe. I would say that the Pegasus does feel a little bit plusher in terms of the upper around the foot. There's certainly a bit more padding around the ankle, and the tongue's got quite a bit more to it as well. Though I will say that from a midsole perspective, the Nike is the more versatile shoe. I think the FLOATRIDE Energy 5 is still a good shoe, especially for the money, but I don't feel its pace range is quite as wide as what you get in the Nike shoe. If anything, that FLOATRIDE foam is just a little bit too compressive and squashy to really excel at propelling you forward. I think the inclusion of that air unit in the forefoot area of the Pegasus is a very important one. I think it just elevates the model above the Reebok somewhat. There's just more response here rather than just squash and compression, and I think the air unit is much more resilient than just foam on its own. Now you've got to remember that the Energy 5 is a clear 25 quid cheaper than the Pegasus, and I think there's some much better colourways in fact available in the Energy 5 than the Pegasus right now. I mean, check out this insane upper and glow in the dark outsole on this version. I don't normally care about looks in a running shoe all that much, but this one rocks. Some of the launch versions of the Pegasus 40 are just really boring, quite mid. This is easily the best looking version of the lot. I think if you only had to have one though, I'd probably err on the side of the Pegasus 40. If you were stuck on a desert island or something, this could do lots of things for you, aside from chop open coconuts. Really great multi-surface traction on this one, and I just find it's a really engaging midsole. I think the Reebok's still a mighty shoe though if you can pick up a deep discount. Now up against the viewer's favourite, the Asics Novablast 3. Even lighter than the Energy 5, this one. Actually the lightest shoe in today's comparison. I've seen people using these from anything from a 3-mile easy run to some longer efforts. That FLOATRIDE Plus formula here is more resilient than that rubbery original formula. Though I think it's a little bit confusing with Asics at the moment. You don't quite know what each of those foams does. There's so many different variations and different types. FLOATRIDE has come a long way since that first version. Let's hope they try to segment it up a little bit. We don't want a situation like with New Balance and Fresh Foam X, or even Fuel Cell. There seems to be loads of versions of that too. That could be anything from tough and firm to as wispy as candy floss. The Novablast 3 has the stack and the lower weight to make a superb do-it-all shoe, of which of course was the exact remit of the original Pegasus model launched in 1983. On foot and at pace I feel the shoes are quite comparable really. I think you could use either of them for some faster reps or intervals, though of course there are other more specific models to carry out those types of sessions. One area that the Pegasus does excel over the Novablast 3 is in terms of the outsole. This one's actually got quite slippery once I've done about sort of 60 or so miles. It did seem to wear down quite quickly. Once you actually wear that away, it kind of peels off. It's very odd. Some weird sort of plastic debris, almost like a varnish on it. The multiple lugs on the Pegasus 40 are just a whole bunch more versatile really. You can use it for almost anything, and that's really the remit of the shoe. Upper lockdown is comparable in these two shoes, though I would suggest the Pegasus 40 has got a slight edge. The Novablast though does benefit from simpler design, less materials here, and of course that brings less weight. It's a big departure really from the V1 that was very squashy. This feels a little bit more hollow, perhaps less rubbery, and I'm finding that the third iteration of the shoe is just much more stable underfoot. It's just more consistent. Now that could be a big step forward for some runners, or a big step back if you loved the version 1. I'd suggest it's certainly not the best recovery or straight out easy day shoe now, but I think it brings the Novablast 3 into more of a Pegasus sort of category, so I think it's a bit down to fit and feel between these two shoes. Some will like the more plush Pegasus, others are going to like the more sort of up for it Novablast 3. Though I think in terms of looks and versatility, the Pegasus has still got a slight edge. This one's so much lighter though than the Pegasus. If you're a sort of lighter built runner, then this could be a better option. Last up, we got the Puma Velocity Nitro 2, a refined second version here of Puma's daily running shoe, the do-it-all beast I suppose you could call it. Lean, mean, and features Puma's nitrogen-infused foam, atop a firmer, more resilient layer of their Pro foam. So that sort of sandwich design creates a really nice consistent feel underfoot. I mean, there's a nice stable cushion there, but it never really feels unforgiving. Any of you out there that have worn a full Pegasus-based midsole shoe will know that they can feel great at pace, but perhaps if you pull back the speed a little bit, they can become a little bit unstable and not really that fun to run in. I think the Velocity Nitro 2 is a great answer to that, though it's perhaps lacking that springy response of that forefoot air unit in the Pegasus 40. It does match up pretty well against the Nike, and of course it's that bit lighter. I think this is the first of the other three shoes in the comparison where the outsole actually really does match the Pegasus, or perhaps even improve upon it. There's comparable grip and traction here. Brilliant for daily applications really, and it will go on for hundreds of miles without any wear. And it works in loads of different types of conditions as well, wet or dry. I've yet to try out a Puma shoe in recent time with very poor traction or grip. A refined upper from the V1, it's probably comparable in terms of thickness to the Pegasus 40, though I think the lockdown achieved in Nike's shoe is slightly better than the Puma in this instance. I'm not the greatest fan of those very thick laces that have been included in this version of the shoe. I may see if I could switch these out to something a little bit less bulky. They really are very close to the ones that we find in like a Nike SB Dunk. Very chunky. Cost wise, the Puma's coming in well below the Pegasus right now. You can pick up some really fantastic discounts on this one. I found them anywhere between about £80 to £50 here in the UK, so a similar price to that great value Reebok Energy 5 model. If I had to have one of these two though on the desert running island, I think I'd probably opt for the Pegasus. Just feels a little bit more refined on foot to me at least, despite the extra heft. I think it's the construction of the midsole with those air units that just adds something extra, though it does need a little bit of breaking in. The Puma's been feeling good pretty much straight out the box. So to summarise, for those after lightness and a shoe that can do almost everything aside from smooth wet surfaces, the Novablast 3 is a great option. On a budget, the Energy 5 and the Velocity Nitro two are great shoes with very few drawbacks. The Reebok better perhaps if you want some heel stability. The Puma is the choice if you want some consistency across the whole footbed and less squash. The Pegasus does pretty much what it always does really, and has done for many years. I'd say with the Novablast 3 they perhaps represent the best that you can get right now for a daily shoe, where you're considering all types of paces really. Just very versatile. The waffle lugs on that outsole are still top draw. What do you say, footwear friends? Furnish us with your feelings on these down in the comments. Musical interlude time. Today it comes from Kurt Vile with Believe I'm Going Down. Now, it's got very hot here in the UK recently. We're slowly getting towards summer, I suppose. Always reminds me of very hot car journeys and being stuck in a massive traffic jam once, just after I'd got back from Stonehenge. I didn't go there, I was just trying to get past it. Listening to this album while the window's down, and there's a track on there called Wheelhouse, and I just kind of forgot why I was really irritated, stuck in this traffic jam. It's got a wonderful, calm presence to the whole album. Really beautiful use of reverb and delay on the guitars. Makes it kind of sound like you're in the Sahara or on a dusty sort of country road somewhere. Wonderful sort of looping lyrics and melodies here. I'm an Outlaw and Lost My Head there are amongst my favourites on this one. Kurt Vile should be way bigger in my books. Go and check this one out. Kurt Vile with Believe I'm Going Down. Thanks for tuning in, people. It's always appreciated. Hit that subscribe button and click the bell below for notifications. Also give this video a thumbs up, like, and share it with your running buddies. My name's Eddbud, and I'll be seeing you